This week on Heads and Tails, we interviewed Dr. Mike Teytelbaum, who's a doctor of chiropractic who also has a diplomate in chiropractic neurology. In this episode, Dr. Mike teaches us how board-certified chiropractic neurologists can alleviate post-concussion symptoms and improve athletic performance. Before we get into the interview, I just want to thank everyone who contributed to the GoFundMe we started for Chianti's story, whose interview is in episode 13 of the Heads and Tails podcast. We already have over $1,000 raised, and we're shooting for $5,000. So if you haven't contributed yet and you would like to, you could find the link to Chianti's GoFundMe at headsandtails.org/Chianti. That's K-I-O-N-T-E. Any contribution is greatly appreciated, and you could do away with your peppermint mocha latte from Starbucks for one day and put that $5 towards the fund, and we could hopefully get him a trainer sooner than later so he can start his training towards the 2016 International Paralympic Games. Lastly, if you haven't done so yet, please follow us on Instagram at Heads and Tails. That's head is in your head, the letter N, and then tails spelled T-A-L-E-S. And on Twitter at Heads and Tails Pod, P-O-D. And on Facebook, give us a like over there. But most importantly, subscribe on iTunes and give us a 5-star review so we can spread our message further and further each week. I hope you guys are ready for Dr. Mike Teytelbaum to blow your mind. This is Kevin Sam. You're listening to the Heads and Tails podcast. We share stories of perseverance and inspiration in sports and in life. All right, so thanks for tuning in to episode 14 of the Heads and Tails podcast. I'm here with Dr. Mike Teytelbaum. He's a doctor of chiropractic, and he also has a specialization in neurologic chiropractic, right?
Chiropractic neurology, yeah.
All right, I messed that one up. I can go back and edit that. All right, so can you just say what your title is, just so when I come back and I say it the right way?
So it's Doctor of Chiropractic with a diplomate in chiropractic neurology.
Okay.
Or functional neurology also,
okay,
as it's called.
All right, so Mike went to Rutgers University. He studied exercise science when he was there. I also went to Rutgers, and I was curious what you thought about the Rutgers football team after this season, just because you were there in the height of the Rutgers football success, I guess, when Ray Rice was there and Brian Leonard. So
yeah, I was there in 2006, rushing the field when they beat Louisville.
You were on the field?
I was on the field. Pandemonium and Piscataway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great night. Nowadays it looks like they definitely need new leadership, and that's what they're getting there. So that's good. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, recently didn't hire a new coach yet, but they hired a new athletic director.
Yeah.
I actually worked there for 4 years when I was a student there, and then last year just as a assistant equipment manager. So
it looks like they got to get more discipline there and just get their systems down better is what it looks like.
Oh, you mean that 7 guys robbing a house and beating people up isn't a good thing?
Yeah, not good PR.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like Rutgers is always in the news for like something bad. It's never anything good.
That is correct.
So
you got to fix that.
Yeah, hopefully the new regime can turn it around a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, so what did you play any sports growing up, or what kind of injuries did you sustain, and what really got you into, or what made you want to become a chiropractor?
I did play a lot of sports. I still play sports. My main sports were ice hockey and lacrosse. I did play freshman football, so I played all contact sports.
Okay.
I did have injuries. I had a lot of different muscle pulls and all that. And with what I know now, I know that I definitely had a few concussions that were not diagnosed.
Right. Yeah. We definitely all have. Anyone who says they haven't had a concussion, they're full of crap. Like, I don't care what sport you played, you've definitely had some sort of concussion.
I definitely remember having a few blackouts momentarily during hockey and football and lacrosse. So now I know those were concussions.
Right.
But I played through them just like everyone else did.
So why did you play through them, and what was the mechanism of injury for those hits?
It was all head-on hits, or getting hit with the helmet upwards towards your chin.
Okay, yeah.
Definitely hurt.
Like Roethlisberger this weekend?
Yeah.
Did you see that hit?
I didn't see it, but I'm imagining it went up just like you're describing it.
Yeah, he got crushed in his face, basically.
Yeah, so I blacked out for a second, but I thought that's what happens, and then you just keep playing through it. And I was able to play through it, and I really didn't have too many symptoms. I wasn't too light sensitive or sound sensitive or anything like that, so I was still able to do what I had to do. and you have the endorphins going.
Right, and what kind of concussion education was available at that point in time? This was
zero.
Right.
I didn't even know it existed really at that point.
Same thing in my situation. Like, it was just at like the height of when people started talking about concussions. So, yeah, I didn't really know too much of what was going on.
Yeah, and thinking back about it now, because I had most of them in high school, I would say, when I was playing all the sports. And I was thinking I definitely had concentration issues that I didn't know I had until I kind of got this all corrected. And I was like, oh, I could have been concentrating a lot better. So I could have done better on my like tests and SATs and all that stuff.
Right. Did you remember like how long that concentration like lasted for, or lack of concentration?
Into chiropractic school, when I started to get into all this neurological stuff, and I realized like, oh, I could do something about this. So I started doing some exercises, and now I'm the best I've ever been, I would say.
You think you're like a hypochondriac, or do you think it was really an issue?
I'm the least hypochondriac person ever. Yeah,
Why do you say that?
I usually don't worry about that kind of stuff. The only reason I started to worry about it is because, not worry about it, I just became aware of it. Because I started learning other stuff. I'm like, oh, that's me. Like, I could fix this.
Right.
So that's how I got into that for myself. As far as your question, how I got into chiropractic and all that.
Right.
I didn't know chiropractic existed even when I was in high school. Literally didn't know it existed. I was just oblivious to it. Then when I went to Boston University initially for accounting and finance, that's what I thought I wanted to do with my life. I was just really bored. I'm like, I don't want to sit in the cubicle for the rest of my life. And, I'm like, I was always into health. So I started researching anything health related. And I knew I wanted to do something holistic. I didn't want to do no drugs, no surgery. And I wanted to be involved with athletes if I could be in the future. So I just started researching everything in the medical field. And when I got home for break, I visited a chiropractor. And I just liked his philosophy, the whole holistic philosophy.
You visited him because you needed some treatment on something? Or just because you wanted to like pick his brain?
His brain.
Right.
And he sat with me for an hour. And we had an awesome conversation. And that's kind of how I got the ball rolling with everything. Then I transferred to Rutgers after my freshman year at BU, basically. And I went pre-med exercise science at Rutgers.
Okay. But why did you transfer? Just for the exercise science program? Or
because I knew at that point I wanted to be in the medical field. I didn't know exactly 100% I wanted to do chiropractic, but I knew it was going to be either physical therapy, occupational therapy, chiropractic possibly. And when I got to Rutgers, I wanted to investigate all those, and that's literally what I did when I got to Rutgers.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So can you talk about your role as a board-certified chiropractic neurologist?
Right. So I got very lucky with this when I was in chiropractic school. So I didn't know chiropractic neurology existed, and most people don't know it exists.
No, I never heard of it. And from what my head's been through, I'm sure I could definitely use some work.
So chiropractic neurology, or it's called functional neurology also. So when I was going to school, there was a functional neurology club. And I didn't know what it was, but my roommate at the time had a friend that was the president of it. He's like, oh, just come with me just to check it out.
President of the Functional Neurology Club.
Yeah. That's what we do.
That's what nerds
do. Right. So I went to check it out, and I was like, this was a whole new world. We're discussing the brain and how different things you can do affect different parts of the brain. And it was a whole different world, and you could treat different things that I didn't think chiropractic could treat. And my goal always was, even when I was at BU, I made a pact to myself that my purpose will be, I'm going to do as much as I can, learn as much as I can to help someone out without drugs or surgery. That was always the goal in the back of my head. And this fit even more perfectly. I was like, wow, if I could learn about the brain, I could help someone even more because the brain controls everything.
Right.
So I delve into that, and it's a hard dive because it's a lot of information because you literally have to learn everything about how the brain and the body works. It's a lot of information, but it's very exciting. You could help someone more. It's really cool. So I got to explain to you, right, what chiropractic neurology is.
Right.
So when you have a concussion, let's say, your MRI and CT scan are normal, but yet you still have symptoms. So what do you do at that point? Most people, the doctors will say just rest and maybe take some headache pills or something like that, or wear sunglasses because the light is bothering you and just you hope it gets better. With functional neurology is you could do an assessment and see which pathways aren't firing right. And based on that, you do different...
When you say pathways, like, what does that mean for people who are listening?
There's a lot of different pathways in the brain, a whole ton of them.
Right, that controls certain
parts.
Things, right?
There's something that controls, your left fingers, your left toes. There's some different eye movements, all that stuff. So you do a full body assessment and you see what's going on, and you see if there's any dysfunction going on. not pathology, because no pathology was detected on the MRI CT scan. I'm looking for dysfunctional patterns, basically.
Okay.
And when I see those, you have to address them. So you have to stimulate those pathways accordingly to balance the person out. When the person starts to become more balanced, like they see results fairly quick, because the brain is more balanced. The brain is more balanced, you're going to function better, and those symptoms should start to decrease.
Right. Can you give us an example of maybe not obviously the participant or the patient's name, but like an example of someone who had post-concussion syndrome and you were testing these pathways that you were talking about, like trying to stimulate these pathways just so we can kind of like visualize the process. And I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this might be going through post-concussion symptoms, right now. So what can a chiropractor do, and kind of take it step by step, like through the intake process and the evaluation process, and then just give some examples of how you guys can help out.
Yeah, there's been a ton. So the intake process, start off from the beginning. You fill out these neurological assessment forms. It asks you a lot of questions about every physiological process. It's probably the most in-depth questionnaire you will have entering a doctor's office.
Okay.
Based on that, is they give me a lot more information on what's kind of going on already. Then when you're in the room with me, I do a full assessment of pretty much everything through different muscle testing, eye testing, balance testing, eye reflexes in general, sensations. It's basically everything a medical neurologist should be doing, but I am looking at it differently. So it's the same information, the same exam, but I am looking at it differently. So a lot of times you'll find that eye movements are not symmetrical how they should be. And eyes are the window to the brain. If you could diagnose the eyes accordingly, you could give specific exercises and you start balancing things out.
Right. And most people wouldn't think that a chiropractor would do that. When you think chiropractor, I think spine. That's what I think of.
Exactly. Right. So did I until I learned all this stuff. So if you see that the person, they can't just gaze at your thumb, for example, the most rudimentary thing someone can do is just gaze fixate, basically it's called. And someone can't do that. I have to find mechanisms out that I can work with the person. Everyone is different, to have the person gaze fixate. Because if you can't fixate on an object, everything, you could have blurriness, you can't concentrate, you may even have a headache because of it, because you can't fixate on something. So everything is always moving around you, and that's not fun. Right. You would have balance issues with that too. So that's the case. You would give different modalities based on what you find the full exam to stimulate certain pathways to start to get gaze fixation going. That's always the basic one. There's also, what if the person can't look well to the right? So every time they track to the right, it becomes blurry. So then you have to find mechanisms to get that going for them. And the mechanisms are through different maybe head movements, stimulation, different adjustments. For example, if I adjust your left fingers, that will go to your left cerebellum, right cortical area.
Okay? Oh, the old right cortical area, yeah.
So, but if you have an issue in that area, that's what I'm going to do to stimulate that area.
Okay.
If I spin you to the left, that's going to activate also your left cerebellum. If you have an issue there, I'm going to do similar stuff like that. You could do stimulation with lights in different parts of the eye from different angles and stimulate different pathways in the brain. Blinking lights in different fashions you could do. You could do reflex things with the eyes. It all depends on what the person needs. So complicated, yeah. It's really complicated, and I have to find the appropriate stimulation for the person. And the person knows when I find it, they start to feel better, literally, because they feel like, oh, wow, this is going to work. And you post-check. You do a post-check and see, did that pathway get better? And the person knows, too, which is always nice.
Right. What are the most common symptoms that people come in with that you're able to help them out?
The most common symptoms, balance, dizziness, concentration, brain fog, memory issues, I would say, light and sound sensitivity, too. So all those are like the classic...
Right, classic symptoms, yeah. Thing. Do you see mostly athletes that come in, or what's like the demographic of the people that usually come in to see you?
With our office, we tend to see more athletes, but we see the general population too. It doesn't matter. You hit your head, you have brain neurological issues, I see the person. So it's really anyone from kids to much older people. Everyone has a brain, right? So you could injure it at any time. So I can see anyone.
Right. So have you seen anyone who maybe have had head injuries years and years and years ago, and they come back? Yes. They come to you now, and now they're able to.
Those are awesome ones. Those are awesome ones.
Can you give us an example of that?
With balance, even with older people. So I can't remember their exact age, but they're in their 60s, I would say. So they always felt off, like they were always leaning to one side, always like when they're moving, they could never move straight. And it was always like they were going left. So I was able to correct that, and they had that forever. They had vestibular rehab, it's balance rehab. They went to PT and all that, but they never got that done for them, and they always had that issue, for example. So I was able to correct that. Another point I would add, so a lot of stuff I do is based on vestibular rehab that a PT would do, except mine is more tailored to like exactly the person's, it's called physiological lesion or like their dysfunction that I find through my exam. So it's not a generic set of exercises. It's a little more tailored, a little more specific for the person. That's the difference. But that little difference is huge for the person.
Right, because it's more personalized to them, you're saying,
So,
right?
yeah,
it's not
so-
like general population. It's like, okay. I
So,
see
for
what you're saying.
example, if you come in and your left bicep is weak, what are you going to do at the gym? You're going to work out the left bicep more, right?
Right.
You're not going to do both identical. You want to get the left side to match the right side.
Right.
But I do the same thing brain-wise. So if the right side of the brain is not working as well as the left side, I'm going to do more exercise for the right side to make it just like the left side.
Okay.
If that's an easier way to look at it.
Blowing
I
our
guess.
mind over here.
Yeah.
No pun intended. All right, so let me use myself as an example. So I had the second impact syndrome. I've easily had probably 20 concussions in my life, like knowing what I know now. And so I had 2 bleeds on my brain. My brain was swollen. I had a craniotomy. And now I don't really have any symptoms like headache, memory, any of that kind of stuff. But I mean, I am in the CrossFit, and like my whole left side of my body is like super jacked up compared to my right. Like everything's tighter. My knees are messed up on that side. Do you think that that could have anything to do with
That definitely
my
can
brain?
be. I don't know exactly what side your bleed was on. Was it the right side?
Yeah, right side. Yeah.
So the right cortical area, the cortex part, controls the left side of the body. So I wonder if you have a sensation misperception there or something like that, possibly.
Right. I have like numbness on my left leg, like my left quad. Like I don't know.
So it could be as simple as the nerves are just getting pinched, maybe from the low back, the lumbar spine.
Right.
It could be a coincidence, or it could be brain based. I would have to do an exam to see which one
yeah,
it
I'm
is.
just curious. Yeah.
It's a possibility. I would have to do an exam basically to see that, but it's
right.
possible.
Okay, so in addition to the neurologic side of being your chiropractic practice, what else can a chiropractor do for athletes in terms of injury prevention and rehabilitation?
So the way I describe myself is we're like body mechanics. So if you come to us, if you have an injury or you don't have an injury, we check out the alignment of everything, check out the muscle tone, and everything should be balanced and symmetric. So if your hips are where they should be, you're going to be better runner. You're going to have less chance of straining the hamstring or the calf because your hips are even. If they're not even, then you have a more chance of straining something because things are off. Then you're going to keep overusing one side, and ultimately you're going to break down, you're going to have a pull. So from our end, we just got to make sure everything is symmetrical as possible for the person. From a neurological standpoint, I also like to look at the eyes to see, because we could do reaction times, right? So if you're a wide receiver for football and you're coming across from left to right, your eyes are doing a certain thing. So what if that pathway for you is not great? I can give you exercises to get it better, so then every time you go into cross one side, you can catch the ball better.
Right.
And if you follow guys in the NFL and college football, you'll see that certain patterns, they are very consistent in catching, and other ones are not so much. Because that pathway probably is not good for them. That's what I'm always looking at. Because if they look over their left shoulder, they may not be as good as over their right shoulder. And some of the listeners, they probably know about themselves even, as I do about myself, that I'm always more comfortable catching the ball from one side. That's something people, if they start paying attention, they're like, oh, that's right, I'm so much better from one side.
That's interesting.
I play hockey. From hockey standpoint, like I always like coming down from the right side of the goalie because my eyes are better up to the left.
Right.
So that's better for me, and I function better that way. So from a performance standpoint, I would do exercise with myself and with patients to get that going too. So now their brain, body, and eyes are all at their best. They're going to perform better.
Right.
From an injury standpoint, if someone comes in with a pulled calf or hamstring or neck, whatever it is, we do active release technique in the office. That's like like a functional massage in a sense. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yeah, I've actually had I work at a physical therapy practice also, so the ladies I work with are constantly like pulling and poking and digging into my muscles. Yeah,
it's pretty painful because we're hitting trigger points.
You feel great afterwards.
Yeah,
but
it's a functional release of the muscle, and that's why we're able to work with athletes and the pros because of active release technique. We also do Graston technique, which is that metal tool you really get into muscles with.
I've been bruised many a time from that metal device there.
And then we also do adjusting, of course. So if the hip is out or the neck or the vertebrae are out, we also do adjustments to set them back into place.
Right.
So all that, if you're balanced, you're functioning better.
Would you say that the majority of athletes out there are not balanced?
Usually most people are out a little bit, I would say. It's very rare to find someone, even an Olympian, that's fully balanced. They're just got really good at their patterns.
Right.
But it doesn't mean they're fully balanced. But with those players, maybe you don't want to do something right before. If they've never seen you before,
right,
and they're used to how they are, maybe you don't want to switch them up right before performance. Right. You would have to do it over time.
Right. So that's that makes me think, like, so from a prevention standpoint, could someone come to a chiropractor? Like, I would think consistency is probably key, just like with anything. Like, you can't just come to the chiropractor once and then, like, magically you're cured, I'm assuming.
No, usually not.
So could you go to a chiropractor to kind of learn, I don't know, like exercises and stuff to kind of consistently do to prevent injuries? Like, so
we give exercises also. So depending on what you have going on, we'll give you specific exercises for that. A lot of times it's the foam rolling that you hear about, different stretching, different functional movements, stuff like that. So it depends on the person. But yeah, we will give you stuff to do at home. And if you do that stuff at home, you don't have to see us as much usually. And if you're really in tune with your body, you will know when you start to feel off and you need us. That's usually how that works. And the really high athletes usually know when that is.
They're in tune with their bodies,
because they're using it every day, so they know when they're starting to feel a little bit off.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is there anything that you commonly see that's like some sort of imbalance that is like directly correlated to a certain type of injury, like an ACL, or is there any like research on that, or?
Everyone is different. It depends. No, because it could be a traumatic injury with ACL.
Like from impact, not necessarily.
And that's what that usually is. What I will say is from a concussion standpoint again. Let's say you get a concussion and it wasn't diagnosed and you're still playing on a little bit of a brain that's not the greatest. The brain controls muscle tone.
Done that before.
Yeah, me too. Actually, many times. So when the brain's not functioning 100%, that means your reflexes and your proprioception, your feeling, your body's awareness, so where it is in space and all that, is not 100%. So guess what? You're more prone then to do something traumatic to yourself.
Other musculoskeleton injuries, right?
You could then turn wrong a little bit, and that that tears your ACL.
Right.
But that's theoretical in nature, but I could see how that happens a lot.
Right. So that actually makes sense because what I try to get across in this, like, I have nothing against people playing sports, obviously, or even playing football. Like, I almost died playing football, but if I could go back and do it all over again, I would. I would just tell someone when my head hurt. But kind of like with my story is, like, I didn't wake up that day thinking I was never going to play again. And because I played with a concussion, that was the end of my career. I'd never played again. So had I sat out a few games like that, I might have been able to still play at least like a few more games in my senior year. So I don't know if I could have played in college or not. Yeah. But when you say that, it's not even just like playing with a concussion. Like what happened to me is very rare with the second impact syndrome, but it's usually fatal. But like you said, if your proprioception's off and you're more prone to musculoskeletal injuries, that's even more reason to sit out when you have a concussion and say something when there's going wrong with your brain.
That is more reason.
Right.
And it's a good way to have more awareness now.
Did you see that? You heard that Ben Roethlisberger took himself out of the game because he had his peripheral vision was messed up after the hit?
Yeah, I heard about it on talk radio. I didn't see it though or anything like that.
I thought that was awesome because he's like a tough dude. Like he's always getting beat up and playing through injuries, but it's awesome to see that someone of his caliber and his people think that he's tough to actually take himself out of a game.
That is great because the kids watching that, hopefully they'll see and they're like, oh, I could take myself out. I'm not feeling symptoms. No, that was a really good move by him.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about what you see the future of chiropractic medicine. I don't know if I'm saying this right. I don't know how to.
Some people say chiropractic medicine. We don't prescribe medicine at all, but it's really just chiropractic.
All right,
That's what I say.
chiropractic. All right. So what do you see a chiropractor's role in the future being for injury prevention and treatment? Like, where are the trends going? Is there anything new that's coming out?
As of now, I think every NFL team has a chiropractor. I think most NHL teams, MLB, NBA, have a chiropractor somehow on staff.
Okay.
Even MLS, the soccer league. So that's trending the right way, I would say. Because, again, we're body mechanics. So to do adjustments and the muscle stuff together, and I do the neurology stuff too, that's the best for an athlete. So we're getting more integrated, so that's good. Actually, just yesterday, the Senate passed a bill that the VA hospitals, it's to be mandatory that most of them have a chiropractor on staff by 2017, I believe. So that's to be another huge thing because the vets and the guys in the Army and the Marines and all that stuff that go over there, they have obviously brain trauma.
Right.
And so this is incorporated well. And they obviously have musculoskeletal issues also from all the heavy gear and all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if you checked out last week's episode, but I actually interviewed a Marine. His name is Keontae Story, and he's a below-the-knee amputee. But he also had a traumatic brain injury from the IED that blew up. So yeah.
So we're getting more.
Yeah, that you said that. So what kind of stuff can a chiropractor do in addition to the neurologic stuff for people with prosthetics? And I'm sure there's a lot of imbalance there naturally, right?
Again, it's to be adjusting where necessary, right, to make them more in alignment, and muscle work where necessary too. Because most chiropractors don't do this neurological aspect. There's only about 800 of us in the world.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's not that many.
Is it because it's like a new thing? Or?
It's not a new thing. It's been around since the early 1990s with the advent of the functional MRI, where they were able to see what certain
brain pathways
do
are
this
firing, and yeah. So for a functional MRI is like it's an image of your brain, but it shows like the connections that are being made, and if any the connections like are no longer there, I guess, or like not firing the right way.
Yeah, and it looks at a lot of pathology too, and they'll see tumors and all that stuff.
I'll put a picture of one of them in the post that I make for this episode, so nice. you can see. Yeah.
So that's how this chiropractic neurology came into be. With Dr. Carrick, he was the one that put all this information together. He basically took medical neurology research, and he put it all together, and we're looking at it from different aspects through functional neurology, it's called. So that's how that has all evolved. So like I said, there's not that many because it's very hard to get certified. It is a lot of hours of training. It's very hard to pass the testing. It's very intensive.
So you're part of an elite group. All right.
It's fairly elite. Hopefully there's more of us actually because more people need us.
Is there like a higher concentration of neurologic chiropractors or like in a certain area? So
in the U.S. by far has the most.
Okay.
But there's some in the
There's like East Coast, West Coast, or
actually, I would say maybe the New York City area, Chicago area, California area, and I'd say Atlanta, Dallas. So I guess we're everywhere in a sense. Kind of pretty even distributed in the United States.
Minus Middle America, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit in Chicago. There's a little bit of us
I'm just trying to give
in the
people
US.
an idea of like where they could look if they're experiencing these kind of issues.
There's a few in Canada. There's a few in Australia. There's a few in Europe as well that I know. Maybe a few in South Africa possibly at this point.
Have you ever worked with any like adaptive athletes who have prosthetics or they were born with a deformation of a limb?
I have not, but there's something we easily could work on that would not be an issue.
Right.
But I personally have not.
I only asked because I interview some of those athletes like on my podcast, and I was just curious. Like some listeners might have that issue.
They have issues like everyone else, so you could easily treat them. That's not an issue at all.
Right.
I guess I never personally have at this point.
Oh, I'm just curious. All right. Is there any misconceptions that chiropractors get that you want to kind of talk about? Do
we have time for all that? There's so many.
So name a few. Yeah.
You have to see a chiropractor for life. That's a good one. So basically, since we are living and life has its stresses, physical stress from, let's say, working out a lot or sitting all the time,
right?
Emotional stress, chemical stress from the toxic foods and all that stuff. So it's a metabolic stress load on you. That's going to affect your body. So what can
a chiropractor do for the toxin stuff that you're talking
So
about?
the toxin stuff, we actually haven't addressed this, but because I do all the neurological stuff, I had to learn everything about the gut. The 75% of the immune system is in the gut.
Okay.
So if your gut is compromised, your brain's going to be compromised because they work 24/7 back and forth. So I actually do something that's called functional medicine also, and I had to learn that knowing the brain stuff.
Right.
So I do a lot of metabolic stuff, blood work things, supplements also, to get the gut working as best as possible. Because basically, if you're nervous, right, your stomach, you start to feel the butterflies and all that stuff.
Right.
That's how you know brain and gut are connected, right? That
Yeah,
happens
okay,
automatically.
Yeah, I'm trying to make this like also like an athlete's performance outlet too. So if you can give any like you're doing right now, any kind of like tips of like, yeah.
So again, from a performance standpoint and all that stuff, I do blood work testing to see if people are reacting to foods and all that stuff. It's food sensitivity testing, not allergy. Because if you have an allergy like celiac, you know it because you have major symptoms.
Right.
I'm talking about sensitivity testing.
Spend a lot of time in the bathroom.
Yeah, so it's the sensitivity testing. You're still having immune-mediated response, so your body is reacting to that certain food. So if it is, you have a cortisol release and reaction. That's not good because you don't want chronic cortisol levels because that's catabolic, meaning that it breaks your body down.
Right.
And you don't want that. So I do testing to see is a person reacting to or sensitive to foods like the whole gluten thing you hear about, different grains, dairy, corn, soy, literally every food I could test for. So I do blood work for that. And a lot of times with concussive patients and traumatic brain injuries, you have to test for that too because a lot of times they have gut issues also. And if you know anyone with gut issues, IBS, Crohn's, all that stuff, usually there's a brain component to it also because, again, it goes 24/7. They work together.
Right.
So there's usually a compromise in one, there's one in the other. So I do that stuff also. It's a lot of things to take.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like, it's way more than I ever thought.
My purpose in my life was like I want to be as holistic and know everything about how to help someone holistically, no drugs or surgery. So that's how I know about all of this stuff, and that's why I do all this stuff.
That's awesome, yeah. Obviously, without saying the patient's name, what's like your ultimate success story that you're like, you helped this patient, and you're like, all right, this is exactly why I chose to be a chiropractor. Can you give us like an example or?
The quickest one top of my head was just a normal guy. Hit his head really hard getting out of a seat in an airplane and hit his head on the top thing there.
Oh, the little
the compartment.
Overhead compartment, yeah.
Hit his head really hard. Developed symptoms right away. Came into the office with sunglasses on. Actually, with sunglasses on and headphones on because he was so sound sensitive, light sensitive. So I did my exam, which was hard to do because of all the issues, and I was able to pinpoint some things. I gave him exercises right there and then to do, and right away everything decreased. And he went to all these medical neurologists, had all this testing done, and they're like, "You're fine. We can't find anything for you."
Right.
So he was pretty happy with that, and it took a few sessions, and I gave him home exercises, and like next time I saw him, he was about 50% better. Which is insane because he literally couldn't live, and he was a high Wall Street guy.
Okay.
So he's works all the time, and he couldn't work obviously and anything like that. So he was very pleased. So that was a good story. That was a really quick one, quick turnaround.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He was very happy.
I'm sure. Yeah. What about any other injuries like musculoskeletal?
I was actually going to say that musculoskeletal wise, I had a pro athlete contact me last season. And he was in a bit of pain. I couldn't stand up literally, and he was just beginning to play more. It was a hockey player.
All right, I was gonna ask you what sport.
It was an NHL player, and so he got more minutes now. He's playing more minutes, and he's very happy about it. He wanted to stay there. So I got contacted to go over there basically to his place because there was a game the next day. So he went from he couldn't stand up, tie his shoes, to he could do that after the session through just musculoskeletal work, the basic stuff we do with chiropractic.
Right.
And he played the next night. He had a goal and 2 assists. He was
no
very
big
happy.
deal. Did he beat a shout out? He pointed to the camera when he scored.
That was funny. He actually got interviewed after the game. He was the player of the game.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, "You don't give me a shout out for that?"
It's messed up, dude.
I'm like, you weren't even gonna play today. And he got a nice contract at the end of the year too. So
He didn't throw you any of
cool.
that money? Any no Christmas gift?
No. I got tickets to the game though. I was at the game.
Okay,
so
that's
good.
cool. All right.
So that was a really fun story because I'm a hockey player. So that was a lot of fun for me.
Is hockey your favorite sport?
Yeah, by far.
Why is it your favorite?
It just combines everything: speed, intensity, hitting, the scoring, the creativity, even the fighting. It keeps like itself in check. I like all of it.
What do you think about fighting in terms of head injuries?
In terms of head injuries, it's the worst thing. It's terrible, obviously.
Right. I know there's a lot of controversy over that. Like a few years ago, it's like, how can you, say that you're trying to improve concussion, management in hockey and still allow fighting? Because obviously that's like there's a direct you can't tell me that getting punched in the face isn't going to affect your brain.
No, obviously it will. And they should be seeing someone like me to make sure everything's okay. But it's a self-policing sport, so meaning that the goon can go after the best player in another team.
Right.
So it's policed by itself. So if the guy does do that, he knows there's going to be repercussions for it.
There's a consequence.
So I think that's cool because that's kind of just
it's entertainment. Yeah.
It's entertainment, but it's like it's a team, such a team aspect. Then everyone's for each other. You just really feel that's very passionate. Yeah, and like everyone likes to see that in a sense.
Right.
So I'm still for it, even though I know there's TBI and all that stuff involved with it.
Yeah, I remember this reminds me of a story that when I was at Rutgers, actually, it was like a public speaking class that I was in. But there was this one girl who was like a huge Devils fan, like literally wore a Devils jersey every single day.
That's intense.
Yeah, I'd say. But she did a project, I think she did one of her speeches on that same exact argument of like, she's thought that you should keep fighting in hockey because of this, and I forget her reasoning. But obviously I was all freaking fired up about that. So I like just gave it to her. I was like, no, like
a brain injury is the worst injury pretty much you can have, right? So I totally understand that side of it, and I see it, all the time.
Yeah.
It's something that, the person chooses to do it.
Right.
They know, with everything that's out there now, they know what they're getting themselves into.
I think that's the thing now. It's like, you can't be a professional athlete and not know the risk. Whereas maybe 10 years ago, you might not have, you probably didn't know it was great for you, but you didn't know it could like kill you at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess.
And speaking of which, I just thought of this. The biggest high profile case of this whole neurology thing we're talking about was with Sidney Crosby. This is how it actually a little bit went mainstream. So Sidney Crosby was out for a year and a half with a vestibular concussion.
Right. He was like the MVP of the NHL.
He's the best player in the world, literally. Yeah. So he got hit with an elbow in the head when he wasn't looking during a game, and he was out. He didn't have balance. He had his eye and balance systems weren't working. So he saw the best medical neurologist, that he could find, obviously, and he's still out for. I think he was out for a year and a little bit more. And then he saw Dr. Carrick, who's the father of functional neurology, at Life University, actually, my alma mater, chiropractic school in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's where Sidney Crosby went. And this was actually on ESPN, and it was all over TSN in Canada and all that stuff.
I'll try to find some links to that, too, that I could post in the
They exist
the notes,
somewhere. Yeah. So there you'll see they show what some of the things Dr. Carrick did with Sidney Crosby. And guess what? He started playing, right? And he's still playing.
Right.
And Crosby actually sustained a second concussion when he got back. Again, he went down to see Dr. Carrick. They rehabbed him again. And right now he's been symptom-free, I think, for over a year now.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about him and concussions in a while. So
so that was pretty cool that happened. So that made it high profile.
Right there, yeah.
So since then... a lot of NHL players, NFL players, or retired players have been going down to. There's a center in Atlanta. There's one in Dallas now. That's all they do is this rehab.
Right. I'm surprised that not more chiropractors have gone into the neurologic side because it's such like a buzzword these days, especially in sports. I'm like, it's almost like why you said it's like not easy to do. That's part of the reason.
Not easy to do. It's time and it's time. It takes a lot of time to learn all that. You have to take a lot of time out of your workday to do all that stuff. But now there are definitely a lot more of us getting into it because of the hype of it.
Right. All right. Yeah. We're coming up on time, but where can people find you at, and what group do you work for? And
so I work at Advanced Performance and Rehabilitation Center. We're in Short Hills, New Jersey. It's 532 Old Short Hills Road here in Short Hills. The phone number to the office, if people want to reach us, 973-467-9011. Our website is www.aprcnj.com. You can get more information about me in the office from there. You could always call if you need a consultation or anything like that. That's easy to do. That's how you could find us, yeah.
All right. All right, sounds good. I'll link all this stuff. Do you have like an Instagram or anything like that?
I
don't. Or you don't want people to follow you?
I don't have an active Instagram. I don't use it. I have it, but I don't use it. So.
All right, just checking.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, Mike, for all your input. And I know the listeners are gonna love this, and hopefully they could, take your advice and maybe go see a chiropractor, and maybe it might resolve their symptoms that they've had for years.
Yeah, it could be pretty cool.
So yeah, that'd be awesome.
Thank you for having me.
All right, no problem. Thanks, Mike. If you've been suffering from post-concussion symptoms and you want to work with a board-certified neurologic chiropractor like Mike, visit the American Chiropractic Neurology Board website at www.acnb.org/drlocator.aspx. This link will also be in the show notes on headsandtails.org/14 for episode 14 of the Heads and Tails podcast. Just in case amnesia is one of your post-concussion symptoms and you forgot to donate to Chianti Stories GoFundMe, you can find the link at headsandtails.org/Chianti. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll see you next week.